Have you ever made a promise so powerful that it changed your entire life? Imagine promising something to someone you love, and then keeping that promise for almost 30 years, even when saying no to that promise might hurt the people you care about most. That is exactly what happened with a man named Charles Spencer, and his story is one of the most incredible things you will ever hear. Very early on a Wednesday morning, right between the time his sister died and the day they would bury her, Charles Spencer sat down and wrote something very important. It took him about an hour and a half, and the words just poured out of him like water from a faucet. It might sound a little strange, but the very next day, he went to see his sister Diana's coffin. This was the night before the most watched funeral of the entire 1900s. He walked into a room all by himself, where his dead sister's coffin was resting. He took out a piece of paper that he had folded up, and he read every single word he had written to her. He did not read it to a camera. He did not read it to practice for the funeral. He read it to Diana because he wanted her to hear it first. That man was Charles Spencer, the ninth Earl Spencer, and he was the youngest brother of the most photographed woman who ever lived. What he read to her that night was not just a regular speech about someone who died. It was a solemn promise, a vow made in private, before anyone else in the whole world heard even one word of it. And for almost 30 years since then, with no big announcements and no press releases, he has kept every single word of that promise. He has not made any documentaries. He has not written any books about his life. He has not given any special interviews to friendly reporters. He has just stayed quiet, carrying a guilt so private and so deep that people who know him well say it has quietly shaped every choice he has made since the day they buried Diana on that island at Althorpe. So when a fancy documentary proposal landed on his desk in early 2026, carrying the logos of Netflix, Prince Harry, and Meghan Markle, Charles Spencer read it, put it down, and replied with exactly 4 words. Is this a joke? Those 4 words were not about being arrogant. They were not about rich people hating cameras. They were 28 years of answers squeezed into one short sentence. And Harry, of all people, never saw it coming. Tonight, I am going to show you everything. The pitch, the secret they were counting on him to keep, and why that forward reply may have just changed the Sussex story forever. Who is Charles Spencer and why has the world forgotten him? Before we go any further, let me ask you something. When was the last time you thought about Charles Spencer? Not Diana, not Harry, not William, but Charles Spencer specifically. Most people, if they are being honest, can name exactly one moment. Westminster Abbey, September 6th, 1997. A global audience of about 2 billion people watched. A young man in a black suit stood at a podium and spoke words so powerful that they made people applaud in the streets outside, and the sound rolled like thunder into the church. He promised, and this is the word that matters, promised. He promised that Diana's sons would be raised with warmth and imagination. He promised they would be protected from the cold, rigid ways of the institution that had crushed their mother. He promised that her blood family would never let the system have them. He said it right in front of the Queen, right in front of Prince Philip, right in front of the future king sitting just feet away. He said it in front of 2 billion witnesses, and he did not flinch even once. And then he disappeared back into Northamptonshire. That is the last time most people paid attention to him. And that invisibility, that long, deliberate silence, is precisely what makes what is happening now so significant. Because Charles Spencer is now 62 years old, the head of a family that has held its land for 500 years, and he has spent every year since 1997 doing something almost no figure connected to Diana has ever managed. He kept his promise. Think about that for a moment. He did this in a world built entirely on Diana. Her face on magazine covers, her dresses in museums, her voice in documentaries, her image on everything from stamps to perfume bottles. Charles Spencer has never once made money from the access he has, never sold the archive, never leased the grounds, never given an interview that opened the vault even a crack. Every Diana documentary you have ever watched was built from the same public footage, the same recycled clips, the same photographs the whole world already owns. Charles Spencer has never lent out the originals, not once. Ask yourself why. And then ask yourself what it would take, what level of trust, what purity of purpose, for a man like that to finally open the door. Now watch who came knocking and what they brought with them. The jewelry trail and the moment warmth curdled into something colder. It started as so many things in this family do, with something small and beautiful and apparently innocent. The royal wedding of 2018, the evening reception. Meghan Markle arrived wearing Diana's aquamarine ring. That pale blue stone was instantly recognizable to anyone who had ever followed Diana's story. And in that first moment, from where Charles Spencer stood watching, it probably felt rather lovely. Someone new, someone his nephew adored, choosing to carry Diana into the most important night of her life. It felt like remembrance. Maybe it even felt like family. Then came the butterfly earrings, then the Cartier tank watch, then the gold bracelets. Piece by piece, appearance by appearance, each item that had once belonged to Diana surfaced on Meghan at precisely the moments where photography was not merely likely, it was guaranteed. Major events, carefully planned arrivals, maximum camera coverage. Now, let me be fair because fairness matters. And I want you to hold this thought. No one can prove the intentions were anything other than genuine tribute. Grief does strange and tender things inside families. And Meghan was newly married into one of the most emotionally complicated families in history. But here is the question I want you to sit with. When does tribute become a pattern? When does a pattern become a strategy? Once is tribute, twice is habit. Every single time matched to a guaranteed camera. That is a decision. And the man at Althorpe was watching. Keep that in mind because the jewelry was only the opening act. What came next is where, by most accounts, the warmth reportedly began to change into something very different. The opera interview and a ghost in the architecture. March 2021, you remember it. The whole planet remembers it, but I want you to remember it the way Charles Spencer reportedly watched it alone from the house where Diana grew up. The lighting was low and golden. The setting was soft, intimate, and confessional. One woman, one sympathetic interviewer, one faceless institution that had, she said, silenced her, dismissed her mental health, left her isolated with no door open except the door to the public. If you are a royal watcher with any serious knowledge of recent history, the chill of recognition hit you immediately, because that is almost exactly the same structure as Diana's 1995 Panorama interview. Run the comparison yourself side by side. A royal wife isolated, speaking of an institution deaf to her suffering. The palace has closed every door, so she goes over its head straight to the public through one trusted interviewer. Hushed lighting, a confessional stillness. The sense of secrets finally escaping. Identical, every element rhymed. The lighting rhymed, the grammar of victimhood rhymed, the casting rhymed. One woman, one sympathetic interviewer, one faceless institution. There is only one element that changed, and it is the most telling difference of all. Diana gave her 1995 interview while trapped inside the system with no exit in sight and everything to lose. The 2021 version was filmed from a villa in California. After the exit, with a production team attached and a streaming deal already negotiated, the original was a cry for help. The remake, whatever else you believe about it, was a launch. And watching from the house where his sister grew up, Charles Spencer reportedly did not experience that hour as a tribute. How could he? Because of what you are about to learn. Something about this man's history with Panorama. A history so painful and so personal that it explains everything about what happened next. The secret, the guilt that built the vault. This is the part of the story most coverage never touches, and it is the key that unlocks everything. By long-standing accounts, it was Charles Spencer himself who first brought his sister into contact with Martin Bashir, the journalist behind that 1995 Panorama interview. The same interview the world now knows was obtained through forged documents and calculated psychological manipulation. Fake bank statements, fake evidence of surveillance, manufactured proof of betrayal. All of it designed to convince a frightened, isolated woman that everyone around her was an enemy and that her only safe move was to sit in front of a camera and bleed for the nation. Her vulnerability was not just part of that broadcast. Her vulnerability was the product, and her younger brother, by these accounts, had unknowingly held the door open. When the full truth about how that interview was engineered finally came to light years later, it reportedly hit Charles Spencer like a landslide because it meant he had played a part, however innocent, however unknowing, in one of the most profound exploitations of his sister's suffering during her lifetime. Think about what that does to a person. You spend your entire adult life believing you are your sister's protector. You stood in Westminster Abbey and told 2 billion people you would shield her sons. And then you learn that the single most damaging media event walked through a door you opened. Everything since, by every account, has been an act of atonement. The sealed archives, the refusals decade after decade, the decision to bury her at Althorpe rather than hand her to the institution, the unseen home movies, the handwritten diaries nobody outside the Spencer family has ever read. He has been making up for it, making absolutely certain that nothing like Panorama can ever happen to Diana again, even in death, even now, even 30 years later. And in doing so, he has achieved something extraordinary, something almost no famous figure of the modern era has been granted. He has protected Diana's mystery. There is a private Diana the world has never consumed, a real, unguarded, fully human version of her. And she exists only because one man keeps saying no. Now put yourself in his chair. You have spent 28 years atoning for one introduction. You have turned down every network, every publisher, every production company, every offer. And then a delivery person arrives with a proposal that wants the diaries your sister wrote in her own hand. The home movies of her as a child running across the lawns of Althorpe, the island where you buried her. All of it. Every last piece of the vault you have been protecting since 1997. And it wants all of it to serve a story that ends not with Diana, but with Meghan Markle wearing her halo. What do you say? Honestly, tell me in the comments what you would say. The pitch and why Charles Spencer called it a joke. Let me tell you exactly what was inside that proposal. Because once you hear the full list of what they reportedly asked for, the response stops looking like aristocratic contempt and starts looking like the only rational answer a man in his position could give. The pitch was a grand anniversary documentary for 2027. 30 years since the Paris Tunnel, 30 years of grief, 30 years of unanswered questions. An emotional, cinematic, definitive Diana film fronted by her own son. On paper, it sounds compelling. Netflix reportedly loved it instantly. The streaming budget was reportedly substantial. The intent on the surface appeared to be a love letter to Diana's memory. But here is what the project reportedly required. And listen closely because this list is everything. They wanted Althorpe itself, the childhood home, the grounds, the lake, the island. They wanted the private family archives. They reportedly wanted access to Diana's personal handwritten diaries, pages she wrote for herself, never for the public. They wanted home movies that have never been seen publicly, the unguarded footage, the real private Diana that no one outside the Spencer family has ever touched. Without those elements, this would be just another history documentary assembled from the same recycled clips as every other one made in the last 30 years. With them, it would be the definitive Diana film of the century. And there was one more thing, one angle, the angle that made the pitch truly irresistible to the people selling it and catastrophic to the man reading it. They reportedly wanted to draw a straight, explicit line between Diana's war with the establishment and Meghan's war with the same forces. They wanted to position Meghan Markle as the modern continuation of Diana's story, the 21st century version of the woman who refused to be silenced. Diana's halo formally transferred. Think about what Charles Spencer saw when he read that. He had watched the jewelry. He had watched the Oprah interview. He had watched the Netflix documentary series in which a couple fleeing the media framed themselves explicitly as hunted by the same machine that destroyed Diana. He had watched piece by piece as Diana's tragedy was converted into someone else's origin story without a single phone call to Althorpe. And now they wanted the vault, the diaries, the island, the originals to crown a successor. Of course, he said what he said. Honestly, the only surprise is that he kept it to 4 words. The Sussex Empire on the Edge. Why the stakes were this high. To understand why this documentary mattered so desperately to the Sussex operation, you need to look at the state of their media empire in early 2026. And I will warn you plainly, it is not a pretty picture. The $100 million Netflix deal, the 5-year arrangement that paid for the California dream, had been hanging by a thread. Flagship project meant to steady the ship was the lifestyle series, With Love, Meghan. Instead, it became a disaster. The reviews came in thick, fast, and brutal. The Evening Standard gave it 4 stars and still could not resist making fun of it. The Times gave it 2 stars and described it, and I genuinely treasure this phrase, as surely dull. The Daily Telegraph also gave it 2 stars, calling it an exercise in narcissism filled with fancy brunches, celebrity friends, and business plugs. And then there was The Guardian. Pay close attention here, because The Guardian is not a royalist newspaper. This is a paper that has long wanted to abolish the monarchy and has repeatedly spoken out against how Meghan was treated. If any outlet in British print was likely to love this show, it was them. They gave it 1 star. One of their writers suggested it might be the last thing Meghan ever makes for Netflix. When the spectrum of British media, from Republican broadsheet to Royal Fan Weekly, all agree on the same verdict, that is not a review problem. That is a product problem. And here is the detail that makes everything sharper. The couple's debut documentary, Harry and Meghan, which told the story of their exit from royal life, remains the most watched debut in Netflix's history. That fact is the key to this entire saga. Their later projects, Heart of Invictus, Polo, With Love, Meghan, each got colder and colder responses. The message from the audience could not be louder if they wrote it in the sky. The world is not interested in Meghan's lifestyle brand. The world is interested in royal wounds. The only Sussex product that has ever truly sold is closeness to the crown and to Diana. Which is exactly why when the brunch economy failed, the pitch deck reached for the deepest royal wound there is. The Netflix deal was reportedly about to expire, and renewal was anything but certain. The Spotify arrangement had already fallen apart. The American Riviera Orchard lifestyle business was not getting the attention they needed. According to royal commentator Ian Pelham Turner, losing Netflix would be a major blow from which recovery would be hugely difficult. Do you see what the Diana documentary actually was? It was not a passion project, it was a rescue flare. The one card in the deck that was guaranteed to draw a global audience because it was the one card printed with the only royal story bigger than their own exit. And the man at Althorpe tore it up with 4 words. Brand audit, how Diana became unlicensed currency. Let me give you a way to think about what was really happening beneath the surface of all of this. Take away the emotion for a moment and look at the assets. When Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties and gave up the use of their HRH styles, they had to build a commercial life on something. What they had was fame with an expiration date and one asset more valuable than every other combined. Diana. Her face, her story, her martyrdom. In business terms, the Sussexes had been trading on a brand without a license, because the actual licensor, the keeper of the archive, the controller of the estate, the owner of the originals, was a 62-year-old man in Northamptonshire whom nobody in the Sussex operation had apparently thought to ask. Every ring worn on a red carpet, every panorama echo in a confessional interview, every hunted like Diana framing in a Netflix production. Each one was an unauthorized withdrawal from the Diana account. And here is the thing about unauthorized withdrawals. They work beautifully until the day you need the bank manager to approve a real loan. Watch the escalation in the ledger. 2018, the aquamarine ring at the wedding reception. The first borrowing received warmly. Then the butterfly earrings, the Cartier watch, the bracelets, each time to a guaranteed photograph. 2021, the Oprah interview, the panorama architecture rebuilt from the ground up. Then the Netflix documentary series, her tragedy converted into their origin story. And finally, 2026, a request for the vault itself, the diaries, the home movies, Althorpe as a film set, the halo fitted to a new head. They began by borrowing her jewelry. They ended by asking for her soul. Each withdrawal was larger than the last. Each one was made without consulting the man who keeps the account, and the final one bounced. The letter, the move nobody saw coming. Now we arrive at the piece of this story that changes everything. The development that most royal coverage has either missed entirely or buried in a single paragraph. Charles Spencer, by all accounts, did not make his decision alone, and sources close to the palace have been quietly describing a relationship that most royal watchers have completely overlooked. The understanding between Diana's brother and Diana's eldest son. It is no secret that Prince William has been privately furious for years about the commercialization of his mother's image, but understand William's position. He is the future king. Every action he takes has consequences. I think it is safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good. And I embrace that and I enjoy that change. I do not fear it. That is the bit that excites me. He cannot publicly block his own brother's media projects without creating a global headline about palace censorship and family warfare. When the institution blocks something, it always looks like the establishment protecting itself. But when Diana's own brother, the man who stood in Westminster Abbey and vowed before 2 billion people to protect her sons, calls a project a joke, that is not institutional control. That is family honor. Nobody can spin it. There is no palace to blame. There is only one brother telling another brother exactly what he thinks of what is being done with their sister's memory. Do you see the elegance of it? The one man free to say no is the one man whose no cannot be used against him. William never had to lift a finger. And I would suggest to you that this is not coincidence so much as alignment. Two guardians of the same memory arriving at the same wall from different directions. Think of it this way. When two governments cannot speak without losing face, the message travels through a back channel, a private citizen, an elder statesman, someone with standing on both sides and a uniform on neither. The envoy says the unsayable precisely because he holds no office. That is exactly the role Charles Spencer now occupies in this family conflict. He is standing with the public blood ties to both princes, moral claim to Diana's memory, and no constitutional position whatsoever. The palace cannot tell Netflix no without a scandal. William cannot tell Harry no without a headline. But the Earl of Northamptonshire can tell everyone no in 4 words before breakfast. And the only institution that takes the hit is Montecito. And then came the move nobody saw coming. In a quiet but remarkable step, Charles Spencer is said to have written to Prince William urging him to publicly address the deepening crisis between Prince Harry and the royal family. And before anyone mistakes this for a peace offering, let me be direct. By all accounts, this plea was not about emotional reconciliation. It was about strategy, stability, the global standing of the British monarchy. The reported contents are striking in their clarity. The silence cannot continue. Harry, in the eyes of the world's media, has become a symbol of weakness. No longer seen as the soldier, the prince, the statesman, but as someone who just reacts, consumed by the story of his wife. Spencer reportedly warned that by ignoring Harry completely, treating him with total indifference, the royal family is handing the Sussexes an open microphone, letting them dominate the global story unchecked, while traditional royal values are mocked in real time. Read that again and let it land. Diana's brother, the man who once stood at her funeral and challenged the Windsors to their faces, is now reportedly urging the future king to defend the crown's image. If you ever wanted a single data point to measure how completely Harry and Meghan have rearranged the loyalties of this family, there it is. The state of the family and the question of trust. Meanwhile, the deeper family fracture has not moved, not an inch. According to recent reporting, the royal family is open to some form of peace talks with Prince Harry, but remains extremely reluctant to reconcile with Meghan Markle. Just weeks after Harry sent aides to London to meet with King Charles's communications secretary, it emerged that the core of the rift comes down to one word: trust. There is none. The royal family's greatest fear, and I want you to sit with this because it is extraordinary, is not Meghan's anger. It is not her grievances. It is her content calendar. They are afraid that any private conversation they have with her becomes raw material for the next media venture. Every honest moment, every family exchange, every quiet word over dinner, all of it potentially filed, packaged, and turned into a streaming product. The same reporting suggests Harry may eventually find himself traveling to the United Kingdom alone, without Meghan, without Archie and Lilibet, if he wants any kind of relationship with what remains of his family. And King Charles has maintained a deliberate silence across the 5,459 miles separating him from his youngest son, even as Harry has reportedly offered to share his diary dates with the family as a gesture of transparency. William and Catherine have not spoken to the Sussexes in years. That is the inheritance of this saga. Not a documentary, not a streaming deal. Two brothers who cannot find a road back to each other, and a family watching from Althorpe with a gate that stays locked. Before you pick a side, whose side are you on? Because a conflict like this never stays inside the family. And right now there is a genuine global debate running across social media, news panels, and international front pages. On one side, those who back Charles Spencer and Prince William argue that Diana's story has been told and retold, that turning her memory into a content pipeline risks making light of the emotional weight of her death. That the 30th anniversary should be a moment of private reflection, not a premiere with a marketing plan attached. On the other side, Harry's defenders raise a case that deserves a proper hearing. Diana shaped both of her sons equally. Harry has a part of the historical record that nobody else alive can supply. What it was actually like to be her child, to hold her hand through hospital wards and homeless shelters, to lose her at 15, and carry that loss in front of the entire world. Nobody can take that perspective from him, but try standing in both pairs of shoes before you decide. Imagine you are William. The most painful event of your childhood is being scheduled as a content drop with a premiere date by your own brother's production partners. Now imagine you are Harry. You are told the story of your own mother, the woman who took you to homeless shelters to teach you what your privilege was for, is somehow not yours to tell. Both of those positions hurt, both are human. Both are true at the same time. The villain in this story, if you want to find one, does not live in Althorpe or Montecito or Kensington Palace. It lives in the commercial machine wrapped around the grief. The machine that looks at a mother's handwritten diaries and calculates their streaming value. The algorithm that turns a family's worst years into a debut documentary that breaks platform records. That is what Charles Spencer has been fighting for 28 years quietly, with no press releases and no applause. Closing the loops and the question left on your table. Let me close every loop in order exactly as promised. Loop 1. What was inside the pitch? A 30th anniversary Diana documentary for 2027 that asked for Althorpe, the private archives, the handwritten diaries, and the unseen home movies built to position Meghan Markle as the 21st century continuation of Diana's story. Pitched at the precise moment the Spotify deal had collapsed, American Riviera Orchard was stalling, and the $100 million Netflix arrangement was expiring. Loop 2. Why did the gatekeeper say no? Because Charles Spencer reportedly carries the guilt of having introduced his sister to Martin Bashir and watched her vulnerability turned into a television product through forged documents. He swore afterward that no one, not a journalist, not a network, not a nephew, would ever harvest Diana's pain again, Every refusal since has been an act of atonement. Loop 3, the letter. Far from siding with Harry, Diana's brother reportedly wrote to Prince William, urging the future king to break his silence and defend the crown. Because in Spencer's eyes, Harry is no longer the threat. The unchecked story is. And so the question I leave on your table is the one this whole saga has been circling from the beginning. Is it ever right to spend Diana's legacy as currency, even by her own son? Was Charles Spencer right to slam the vault shut? Or does Harry's grief give him a claim no gatekeeper, however principled, can override? Tell me below. I read every comment. I genuinely want to know where you land. But carry this line out of here with you, whatever you decide. Diana was exploited once by a man with forged documents. Her brother has decided she will not be exploited again by a man with a streaming deal. The vault at Althorpe stays shut. The question now is what a desperate Montecito does next and whether Netflix walks away for good. The moment anything moves, you and I will be the first to talk about it. Subscribe so you do not miss it. I will see you in the next one.